What's going on, guys? Well, I just got back to the house. I just got done with a half-day trip on Plaza today. Kind of came off the water about 11 o'clock. Storm started coming in. So anyway, just got back to the house. Welcome to Norman Lee Fishing, better known as my personal playground. I want to talk to everybody today a little bit about the million-dollar question: braid versus mono when you're Carolina rigging deep water, especially Lake June and Lake Placid here in south central Florida. So anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how I tie my Carolina rig, and then I'll get into why I prefer monofilament over braided line in that deeper water. Okay, I'm running 25-pound big game coming off of my reel. My reel is spooled with 25-pound Berkeley big game. The reason I use Berkeley big game is, number one, very strong line, but secondly, it's a very cost-effective line. I could buy a pretty large spool of Berkeley big game, and retail on that line is about 11 bucks. And you get enough on that spool to spool 5 or 6 or 7 bait casters. So you get a lot for the money, but it's a very good and strong line. You know, me being a guide, typically before every trip, I re-spool every reel that we are going to be using that day. The reason I do that is because if there's any bad spot in the line from the previous trip, I'd rather spend a little bit more money re-spooling every reel than somebody breaking off on the biggest fish they've ever seen. So that's why I re-spool after every trip. Typically, you don't need to do that after every time out, but the line is, you know, the price on the line, it allows me to do that, but it's a very good line at the same time. Okay, of course, you know, then you run your flat-out tungsten, followed by your flat-out barrel weight. The barrel weight basically acts as old school as glass bead. Everybody, you know, you always hear Carolina rig glass bead followed by the weight. But with the tungsten, you cannot run a glass bead because the tungsten material, or the tungsten weight, will actually crack glass. So flat-out tungsten came out with a barrel weight. It's actually originally designed as a lightweight C-rig weight, but it works perfect as your bead in between your flat-out weight and your swivel. Then your swivel. Now here's where I get a lot different than most people. And if you see anybody using this length leader, they either seen my stuff, I've told them about it, or they've watched me. A 7-foot leader. Okay. The reason I do that is it actually gets that bait a little bit further back from your weight, and I have experimented all different length leaders over the past 25 years, and I've came to find that the longer leader, the 7-foot leader, will improve your bite 5 to 2 over a conventional 15 to 18 inch leader like you normally see everybody throw. So anyway, that's the rig. And of course your hook and your bait. I like to throw the bigger baits. When I'm on Placid, I am power fishing. I am throwing heavier line. I'm throwing bigger baits. Basically, I am going after monsters. I'm not going after the 2-3 pounders. You're going to catch 2-3 pounders or smaller, but I am going after the toads. So I power fish. I use big baits, big line. My leader line I use, of course, 25-pound off the reel. I use 17 to 20-pound fluorocarbon. I like to throw a little bit lighter fluorocarbon, or a little bit lighter poundage fluorocarbon than what I'm running off the reel. And the main reason is if you actually get yourself hooked on bottom, even if you're drifting a shell bed, if you're not fishing any defined structure, there's stuff down there you can get it hooked in. Chances are you're going to break the leader before you break your main line and lose your whole rig. You'd much rather lose a 50, 60, 70 cent hook than a $8-9 weight. So that's the rig. Now, the reason I prefer mono coming off my reel over braid. Braided line has no stretch, which in most cases you don't want stretch. No stretch is good in most cases. Okay, when you are fishing at deep water, you want to have stretch. Again, I'm fishing for 10-pounders. I'm not fishing for 2-pounders. So I don't run much drag on my reel. When I set up on that fish, it's all hook going into that fish. There is no slippage in drag. Okay, but with that being said, if you're throwing braid and you have a fluorocarbon leader on the other end of that, because of that braid having absolutely no stretch, and I guarantee, I mark my words on this one, you will break that fluorocarbon leader on impact, on hook set, 50% of the time. Because of the no stretch factor with the braid, you will pop your fluorocarbon. Okay, that's one of the reasons. The other reason is you have some stretch in that line, so it allows that big fish to load up on your rod a little bit longer without pulling the hook away from it. Most fish, if they're ready to be caught and they're going to eat, they're not going to drop the bait. Don't be too antsy on your hook set. Follow the load up down to the water line. You want to have a very long hook set and a good hook set. But follow that load up down. Don't set the hook too premature. Here's what I tell a lot of people. You could actually hold a big fish with the load up in the rod for probably 20 seconds or sometimes more without setting the hook, and that fish will not let go of that bait. You could keep that rod loaded up on her. And the reason for that is, if you hold the load up to that fish thinks that bait's trying to get away from her because the pressure of the bait's on her mouth. So she will actually, theoretically, clamp down on that bait tighter when you have more pressure on that bait. A lot of people I see, they feel the pressure. First thing they do is they put the rod tip down to the fish immediately. The line goes slack. The fish is going to drop the bait a lot quicker because they lose pressure. That's not natural for that fish. The natural is that bait's trying to get away from the fish. Hold that load up. Follow that load up. Let the fish pull your rod with the load up down to the water, never losing the pressure. Once you get at a great angle where you have a long swing, set the hook. Rip the fish's head off the fish. That's how hard you want to set the hook, and I'll get into the reason for that in a couple of minutes. Okay, never lose pressure. You don't want to lose pressure with the fish. Watch your rod tip through the whole process. Make sure your rod tip stays bowed. Don't try to winch the fish. There's a lot of people, as soon as they set the hook, they're winching that 8-pounder in, trying to get it into the boat as soon as possible. A good analogy on these big fish is like setting the hook on the back of a Volkswagen, or setting the hook on bottom, but the bottom's moving. If you try to winch it, you're going to end up ripping the hook out of the fish. Now here's another reason for fishing mono versus braid in deeper water. And this comes more into play when you're fishing a brush pile, but keep in mind, even if you're fishing shell beds or drop off or some kind of a break, there's a lot of stuff on those different areas too that's down there as, defined structure that you could get hooked in. Now here's the thing, if you're fishing braid. If you happen to get your weight lodged in a piece of structure that you're fishing, like a tree pile, and there's a lot of fish on that specific structure, okay, when you get your braid hooked in it, you are not breaking off if you need to. Now what's going to happen is you're probably going to sit there and you're going to jimmy and jar that tree pile to death. And what's happening is now you're spooking and you're startling everything that's on that tree pile. And you're not going to get your rig back. You're going to end up having to cut your braid right at the water line because you're not going to break it off. But in the meantime, you're actually destroying that tree pile for the day. Because what fish you were catching on it is now so spooked because of all the jimmying and jarring that's going on down there trying to pull that braid out of there. Now everything's, the tree pile is basically done for the day. So at least with monofilament, even with 25-pound test, if you hold your rod tip straight and never try to get it out by bowing your rod. You want to hold your rod perfectly straight with the line and just pull the heck out of it. Chances are, usually, you will be able to eventually break it, and it's usually going to break right at the rod tip side of the swivel. So you could get it out, get most all your line back. Yeah, you do lose your rig, but you're not losing half a spool of line and having to cut it right at the water line, because with braid, it's not like you're fishing the shoreline. You can go back and retrieve it. That's the other reason for mono versus braid. The main thing is you do need stretch when you're fishing deep water. Okay. Other than that, that's about it. That is the $1,000,000 question, braid versus mono. That's why I prefer mono over braid. I'm not saying braid won't catch fish, won't work, but trust me, try the rig I just told you, try my setup, get out there, give it a try, and you're going to find that, you know, most likely monofilament coming off your reel is going to help you a great deal. And try that longer leader. It's probably going, it's no doubt in my mind that longer leader is going to improve your bite. Again, I can't stress, you know, bruiser bait dudes. Bruiser bait is the bait on Placid. The Big Nasty, that is one of my main go-to bait. Then bass out there love big baits. Try it, 14.2 5-inch pure nastiness in that worm. Then fish will annihilate it. And the neat thing about the Big Nasty, it doesn't eliminate your bites. It doesn't. You're not only going to catch big fish with it, you'll catch every fish with it, but it will improve your big bite fish. So try it. The 10-inch curly tail. There's a lot of bruiser bait products that I use out there, Carolina rig, and they all work. Even your 5-inch stick worms, your 6-inch big sticks, they work great as well on a Carolina rig. Get out, try it. I guarantee you guys, you will not be sorry. I appreciate everybody listening. Please also go to my YouTube channel if you don't mind. Thank you, and please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Norman Lee Fishing. Guys, everybody, thank you. Keep tight lines. Come and see me, Heartland Outdoor World. Come and talk to me. Say hi every once in a while as you pass in. Even if you don't need to buy anything that day, just stop by, see me. I love the company up there. Let's talk some fishing. Thank you, everybody. Catch y'all later.